May it please the audience, I'm Rich Schoenstein. This is So Sue Me, another Lawfare edition where we tackle a couple of the latest cases out there. And I can't even believe the panel that I managed to assemble today. I've impressed even myself. Here's who we have. We have Lauren Conlin. And if you follow true crime and celebrity cases at all, you know her. She's a podcaster, reporter, and host, pop culture and true crime. She's a contributor at LA Magazine. She is a must follow on the social media for these cases. And she's currently, as she'll say, spending some time at yet another Harvey Weinstein trial. We'll get into that. Lauren, thanks for coming.
Thank you so much. That was so lovely.
Well, you earn it. And also earning it is Bob Motta. Bob is a criminal defense attorney. He is host of the Defense Diaries podcast. Spoiler alert, Bob and I don't always agree, but I always find his analysis to be interesting, and I find his presentation to be respectful, and he's someone I've enjoyed being on the TV with before and on his podcast. So Bob, thanks for coming aboard.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And rounding out our panel, we have a returning champion from the first edition of this Lawfare competition. We have Sunny Slaughter. She's a criminal behavior analyst and profiler, a law enforcement SME, a litigation and jury consultant, and I believe the Olivia Pope of crime. Are you still calling yourself that?
I just had a slip with the presidents. Yeah.
I have considered calling myself the Pope of civil litigation, but it's not really catching on. Okay, let's get into our topics.
That's a great point about Bob always having a respectful argument, too.
Yeah.
I do agree with that. Even if you don't agree with Bob and he doesn't agree with you, he's so wonderful about it. And he doesn't clap back either, which I think is so nice that you don't clap back at anyone who, it's just refreshing.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no point in it. You know what I mean? If people make a valid argument, I want to
even
hear
in
it.
this legal analyst stuff where people disagree and it can be divisive, I mean, there's no reason we can't have a conversation.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
Exactly.
So,
All right,
Absolutely.
topic number one. Here's where Lauren's been spending her time.
Wow.
Do you know these people?
Ugh.
I do. I do. And it's nice. You know, I love Arthur Aidala. He did an incredible job defending Harvey previously. When this charge, the Jessica Mann charge, resulted in a hung jury, I know that they really wanted to work something out, right? They did not want this to go to trial again. It just didn't really make sense. And Harvey was not willing to plead guilty. He was not. He said over and over, you know, Jessica Mann and I were in a relationship. And from what I've seen, and this is my second time, you know, they did appear to care for each other. You know, it was both ways. And I think, we don't know for sure, but Mark Agnifilo had hinted to reporters, maybe I think it was during jury selection or during a pretrial hearing, that Harvey might take the stand this time,
wow.
and tell his story. But we don't know yet. But I just remember when Judge Farber said they were going to go to trial again, Arthur was like, he was broken. So this makes sense to have a fresh new team in. Jacob Kaplan, who also reps Luigi Mangione, he repped Harvey as well in 2018. Very familiar with all of this. The difference in this trial as well is mainly there's none of the Molyneux evidence, and I'll let you guys explain exactly what that is. But I've seen a lot of objections because some of it is starting to creep in, and the defense is saying, well, you know, we don't even know if we want to bring this back up to the jury because it seems like it went over their head. However, you know, we do want to make sure this is stricken from the record, but they're trying to be strategic about bringing focus to it if it slips out of the witness's mouth, you know?
Yeah, let me back up a little because you really dove right in, and
Sorry.
you answered the first question I was going to ask you, which is why are there new lawyers? As you said, right, this is the third trial. There was a conviction of Harvey Weinstein where they let in a lot of evidence about other accusers beyond those that were at issue in the case, and that conviction was thrown out. He was retried on charges relating to 3 women, and he got the most split verdict I've ever seen. 1 guilty, 1 not guilty, and 1 undecided. And the undecided was on this Jessica Mann charge, and that is now back for a 3rd trial. And as you said, Lauren, last time his lead attorney was Arthur Aidala, one of the leading criminal lawyers in New York, a guy, if you watch these programs, you've seen him a lot, but also if you're in the courtroom, you see him a lot. And Weinstein selected a new legal team headed up by Mark Agnifilo, who is also a highly in demand New York criminal defense attorney right now. So you got into it a little bit. Is there anything else about why they made that change in counsel?
I mean, I think it was time. It was time for a fresh team. The last team of attorneys with Arthur, they also added Jennifer Bonjean as well, who did a lot of the cross-examination on the women. Did not work, in my opinion. Jennifer Bonjean and it was Miriam Haley, the last trial. It was brutal. They were screaming at each other, basically. Judge Farber. I mean, Rich, I don't know if you have experience with Judge Farber. I will say he is a very kind man, but he is sometimes can be a wuss. He like hates making decisions. He hates it's always like, oh, we'll table this. We'll get to this when we cross, when we come to it. So it's kind of hard. He doesn't sometimes command the courtroom as well as he should. So, you've got Jennifer Bonjean screaming at a witness. She storms off the stand. Now, this time around, we have Tenny Garagos, who I witnessed in the Diddy trial, talk to the female witnesses, acting like they're girlfriends, very casual, very, very effective. Very effective. So I think the overhaul was smart. You need someone fresh who's not kind of sick of and look at even the reporters in the courtroom are kind of like, we feel bad for Jessica Mann, but we've heard this testimony before. We've heard a lot of it before. So it's tough.
Bob, are you surprised that there's a 3rd trial after that split decision? The guy's been convicted. He's in jail. What's the point? Why are we doing this?
I think it's probably for the benefit of the victim, mostly, and I think that there's probably additional victims out there. Um, I mean, that casting couch thing was a real thing for a long, long time, and, I mean, if you're sitting here trying to wonder if it's worth the resources and the time, it's a different question, but that's what the job is, and, ultimately, I think that if you get somebody in that prosecutor's office that is of the mindset that they're gonna finish what they start, that's kinda where we're landing with it.
Yeah.
Funny story, I went to law school with, Damon Sharonis, who got pulled in on Weinstein's first trial. He's an Illinois federal guy, does mostly federal stuff, and Damon got pulled in that case. I was texting him after the conviction, I'm like, "How'd that go, man?" And he's like, "Oh,"
California or
he
New York?
New York.
It was New York? Oh, shit. I
Yeah,
wrote that down. Okay.
yeah, yeah, he's a longtime friend of mine. He was my first I had in law school, it could get combative sometimes in class, and he was like we had a really fun, interesting, back and forth, and I think it was our crim law class where we were kinda going at each other. And we were both 1Ls, I think, at that point, so I've always liked him. But yeah, I mean, you could say that on so many cases, It's like when you kinda look at Lori Vallow, she
Yeah.
wasn't going anywhere, she was done, but Arizona wanted to get their justice for their citizens, and they hauled her in, and even though, Weinstein's been through this dance multiple times at this point, I think that there's probably people in that office that, want him to pay for everything that he did.
Yeah.
Let me ask you the flip side question. If you're Harvey Weinstein, why not just plead guilty? It has not much of a meaningful impact on the rest of your life, and you can avoid yet another trial and more expense.
Rich, this was a 16-year penalty or something. Like this wasn't like a 4-year. I mean, if he were to plead guilty, like think of that sentence. That would be crazy. I mean, do you agree? Like this, I thought the same thing. I was like, well, if it's 2 years and you've already served it, and sorry, I don't know if that question was for me. I'm just saying, like, He said he didn't do it. He said, and I'm not sorry, I'm not sick enough for that. I'm saying what he said. He said, "I didn't do it. We were in a relationship. Everything will show that we were in a relationship, and she's troubled. Why would I risk like 16 years? Like why would I do that?" Because they haven't sentenced him on the guilty verdict for Miriam
Right.
Haley in 2025. So this is all he's not going to get sentenced till after. So it's,
Yeah.
I get why. Like I get why. I wouldn't if I felt that way, you know. And I think because it was hung and there was problems with the jurors, but I go
Yeah.
back to Farber not wanting to make a decision, he wouldn't question the juror who said he was being threatened. The
Right.
juror went to Arthur, said,
Right.
I was getting threatened, whatever. Arthur goes to Farber. Farber's like, "Yeah, I don't see anything here." It's like,
Yeah.
you don't see any Sorry, I'll stop talking, but it's
No,
No, no,
you're
that
good.
I
You're
yeah.
good.
Bob, are you on board with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the easy answer. I think that Weinstein's always come across as that guy who just, is professing his innocence. Like it was always relationships with them, which is the tricky thing about these cases.
Exactly.
I mean, it was that thing where there was a benefit
Yeah.
that was gained by the victims,
Yeah.
and in his estimation, they were in some type of relationship. They're tough cases to try, frankly. I mean, he said she said cases in general are tough
Are
to
tough.
try, but then when you're kind of putting in the added element of career arcs, it becomes a different thing, you know what I mean? So, I mean, from his perspective, he's got nothing to lose.
And when you're saying relationship, when you're thinking, he's saying this is a relationship, they're saying this is sexual violence, and they're not agreeing, and he is holding to that. Everybody wants their day in court. Everybody wants their say. Everybody wants to stand up for themselves. And I think we're just going to have to sit back and watch all of this play out because everybody has different eyes. The women are saying this was violence, this was coercive, this was demeaning. They felt pressured. And he's saying this was a relationship. This was a quid pro quo. This is how, this is it. So, no. And frankly, if you've ever been in a situation where somebody said you did this and they're saying 80 years and you're saying, well, I'm going to walk those years to the door because I am not going to say that I did something that I didn't do. Fear you might.
Jessica Mann has said on the stand that she acknowledges that it was a relationship, and they had other consensual sexual encounters, but this one in particular, she is like, "No, I said no. I was crying, I was screaming, and he, did this anyway." Also, let's not forget, like Harvey was convicted in
Yes.
California, and he also paid out like a shit ton. Sorry, am I allowed to swear? A
You
crap
can say
ton,
shit ton.
yeah, of money to people. You know, he paid out a lot of money in civil suits. Like
Yes.
that's guilt to me. Like you are guilty of assaulting these women. You know that you're guilty.
100%.
However, I go back to I really think deep down he wouldn't go
Just
through all this either
yeah.
if he didn't think that he
He's
but
not
then you've
guilty.
got
Yeah.
yeah, then you've got Jessica Mann, and she had a rough childhood, man. It was
Yeah.
tough to listen to. A juror was
Trauma.
crying,
Yeah.
yeah, about and the defense tried to get that out, and I thought to myself, "Man, if they could have gotten her childhood out, that would have been better for their case."
100%. I
Tragic,
mean, that's
tragic.
incredibly, that's a huge amount of bias.
Yeah.
So it is. And I mean, the relevance argument probably was pretty epic in terms of how it related to what was going on in this particular situation. But yeah, I mean, with the Weinstein situation, when you look at him and he looks like, a troll that literally crawled from under a bridge, and that the power that he wielded in Hollywood. I mean, the
Exactly.
dude was
Exactly.
they were him and his people were some of the biggest producers of all time, I mean, when
Roy,
you look at the names that they're attached to, that casting couch was a real thing,
yeah.
that he
It
used
was
that as a
laid out.
weapon.
Literally laid
Yep,
out.
yep.
I think this is a stronger opportunity for an acquittal for a lot of reasons you guys have already alluded to. First of all, it's a single victim case, right? The multi-victim cases are always stronger because you can say one was something, but it's hard to say three was something. Secondly, this is a relationship. There is an underlying relationship here between the accuser and Harvey for sure. Thirdly, Harvey is very old and frail now, and that presents differently in court as a defendant. He looks the worst. And then fourthly, I would say we're 10 years past Me Too, right? We're in a different environment and we're bringing in jurors to assess this. And I think the mentality is a little bit different. Sunny, what do you think about that last point? Do you think we probably have a different kind of jury than you would have had the first couple of times this was tried?
Do. And I think because we are hearing so many of these cases and there's so much in the public eye, public realm, and people are now getting a taste of what it was like for the victims and the perpetrators and how they're seeing themselves and people are also bringing in more of their own experiences to these as jurors. They are bringing in their own lived experiences and those that they know, and I just think that it doesn't resonate with the same level of anger when you think about Diddy. But then you also think about how Cosby, when you look at Cosby, Weinstein, that it, they're coming back, but this level of new jury, they just don't see things in the same realm. There's not that fierce initiation of Me Too and the movement that existed, I think, prior to. People are now, I think, a little more savvy in how they're listening and hearing. And I just said this yesterday. Listening and hearing are not the same thing, which is why we have to have jurors that are really tuned in to both what they're listening to and what they hear, and then how they come together to make decisions really matters in these cases. And we're seeing this play out in how juries are making their decisions, like the 3 split decision. In the national realm with juries, I just think you really have to have not only experts and victims on the witness stands, but you have to have someone that can understand what the jury is thinking about. Your question was spot on. And this is a question that I don't think lawyers are really asking. The question that you just asked me, I think lawyers and firms and teams need to have someone that's the jury person that can say, whatever you're trying to do based off of what you thought you saw is not the right.
What is your vibe, Lauren, from this jury, from the current jury in the Weinstein case?
Yeah, I mentioned I did see one juror visibly kind of tear up at her at listening to Jessica Mann's childhood. It was sad. Like it was hard, and she was breaking down and she had just first got on the stand. It was fresh, there was lots of press there. It was kind of just the whole vibe in the courtroom. So people are on
Mhm.
the edge of their seats. It's one of those things. Now by day 2, yesterday, she had broken down several times on the stand. And there seemed to be some problems with, you go back to these cases, sexual assault cases, and they've happened decades ago. Obviously, the witness is not going to know times or place. I've been through
Mhm.
this so much, with
Mhm.
Diddy, Alexander Brothers, and now this, but it's a little different with this one because the witness, this is her third time doing this. And again, she agreed to this with the DA's office, or maybe they forced her. I literally don't know. She's very strong to do this for the third time. I'll put it that way. But at this point, she is not remembering certain time periods. And the
Mhm.
judge will stop the questioning and be like, you don't remember if this dinner was before or after the assault? Like, there was a heated moment
Wow.
yesterday where she just kind of started throwing her hands up to the jury being like, I'm just trying to be honest with you guys, and like blah, blah, blah. And then Blumberg, the prosecutor's like, do you need a minute? And the judge is like, let's just take a minute. So they took a minute. You could tell the jury's like, the hell's going on? They're kind of smiling like it's a joke almost. Agnifilo gets up. He's angry. He's very angry. And Nicole Blumberg says, well, what do you expect? She's sitting here testifying for the third time in front of her rapist. And she points to Harvey.
Wow.
Agnifilo is like, he's like, that's not necessary. Stop. Like, it was super heated. So she gets back on the stand after, right? You could tell the jury's like, what's going on? And And getting back into a sob story about her childhood again, but this time it was about not taking money from Harvey that he sent to her when she was in dire financial strain, and she starts saying, well, they're like, "Did you need the money?" And she's like, "Yeah, I mean, I was malnourished, I was starving, I was going into starvation." I almost saw the jury be like, like, almost like this again, and maybe I'm wrong, but it was a few of them where they were like, "Okay, you've had a bad childhood, but how bad can one person's life be?" It was almost like, rein it in a little bit,
Yeah.
without sounding too harsh, you guys know what I'm saying, but the whole thing, I'm just like,
Where Lauren, let me ask you, like, and I don't know if you were in there for any of the pretrial arguments about that, like the motions in limine. How did that come in terms of her childhood? I just
Yeah.
it just came out the other day. I honestly don't know. There was an argument before the trial, and they had said, I guess they were trying to block everything from coming in, and it just didn't work. And as far as like the Molyneux evidence and everything, she made a statement on the stand saying that Harvey said something to her after an alleged grape. I'll say that, Rich, for your YouTube. That he was like, you can be like my main girl and go get me other girls, which they wanted stricken from the record because in the first trial that it was stricken from the record. And so it's just like it's really strange. The campaign fund that the victims had, that's going to be introduced, but only I think there's going to be one leading question about it. There, like I said, Farber doesn't make full decisions. He's always like, well, we'll see what happens after you ask the one leading question and go from there. And then there's like a big fight. So I don't know. We'll see. And we're never going to get through the trial. Sorry, I'll stop talking because we have 6 breaks a day, starts at like 11, ends at 4:30. 2
Hey,
hour
wow,
long.
Bob, as a defense attorney, you of course don't want all of that testimony coming in about how
Right.
hard her childhood
right,
was.
Mhm.
But if it does come in, you can work with it, right? Because if she's embellishing that, that could actually backfire. That could become a credibility issue. So
right.
you would attack that as a defense lawyer, right?
Oh, 100%. I mean, if it's coming in, you're gonna have to deal with it, and you're gonna deal with it in a way, like you said, to try to turn it around and attack her credibility in the sense that, if you can kinda make any connections from her childhood that would tend to reflect why she might not being truthful now,
Truthful.
you're gonna
Yeah.
pounce on that,
Yeah.
and especially if it had to do with abuse, as a child, and,
Yeah.
but in front of a jury, you gotta be very, very careful,
Yeah.
I mean, when
Yes.
you have a witness like that on the stand and kinda what Lauren was talking about initially, where, Bonjean was the one that they kind of assigned to cross-examine the female, victims and the witnesses and say like, I have the same approach when I try a case with my wife, Allison. We usually like to have a female crossing a
Mm.
female because I don't
Yeah.
want it to appear as I'm bullying a witness.
Right.
If it's a
Right.
female, especially if it's in an SA case, where it's a
Yeah.
delicate subject matter. So, yeah, but I mean, you're going to have to try to work around the issues, even though I'm having a hard time grasping what the relevance was, but I haven't heard the testimony, so I don't know in what context they're putting it to make it relevant to what happened in this particular situation. But yeah, I mean that's what you're going to do. You're going to use it to your advantage by cross-examining delicately, in order to kind of plant the seed in the jury's mind, like, is this person really
Exactly.
credible?
All right, I'm going to try to jam in another topic here, even though we've spent a lot of time on that one.
Oh
All right,
gosh.
so who are these people?
I feel
David,
like I'm
right?
talking so much. Someone go. Sunny, go for it.
No, no. Well, this is David. This is the alleged child rapist, murderer, the child victim. This case I think is morbid based on how her body and what we know about the dismemberment. That makes it even more disturbing than I think some people when it comes to their alleged relationship, which She was so young, she could not consent to a relationship. That's illegal. Let me put on my human trafficking law enforcement expert hat to say that this is the greatest form of exploitation, alleged exploitation, encompassing murder, dismemberment. And this case is going to be hot. People are going to follow it because he had so many followers. And then a murder for which he created a video that talks about the murder of the alleged murder of this young victim. Um, this is going to be a difficult case, but I also think, and I'm going to probably take some heat for this, that her relationship with her parents is going to be where the defense is going to really stand out with this case. We've seen it before. Disconnect. Yeah.
Her name, for the record, is Celeste Rivas
Yes.
Hernandez,
Yes.
and she was found dead and dismembered in body bags in the trunk of David's car. And Bob, there's a long period of time between that finding and the arrest. Do you have a theory about what took so long? Are there issues here between law enforcement and the prosecutors? What's your take on what's going on?
Yeah, when Lauren was reporting, and as Rich said at the opening, if you guys aren't following Lauren, I call her Scoop Conlin because she's really one of the hardest working people out there in terms of trying to track down leads and get kind of breaking news, and she does an amazing job, and I adore her personally. I think she's just an amazing person. But at any rate, when the arrest took place, you know, I was like, what the hell's going on? Because there was some misinformation that was out, whether or not there had been a complaint that had been filed.
Mhm.
Because I was like, look, they got 48 hours to charge them
Yeah,
or release them. Otherwise, they're going to potentially have a real constitutional issue there if they
exactly.
hold them too long. But because it was on I think was it a Thursday or was it a Friday,
I think it was
Lauren?
Thursday.
Thursday.
Yeah.
Thursday
Yeah.
So
evening, yeah.
and I'm like, ask Aragos because he's used to LA, like, if they've got some kind of buffers out there where they're not counting weekends as a work day, so that's not gonna constitutionally but, like, in terms of that gap in time, man, I think that the biggest problem is that you had a decomposition problem with the
Yes.
body, and, and I think that they had to start working his inner circle in
Mhm.
order to get somebody to flip
Yeah,
because in my estimation, the only way they're getting that murder one charge on him is if somebody flips
exactly.
and from the inner circle because they're not gonna be able to come up with the cause of death. They're just not well, the mode of death. They're not gonna know how she died, if it was poison, if she was
No, I mean, they
suffocated.
did say it was sharp force injury was the cause of death, which
Good
was
luck
the
proving it.
I mean, no, so you're right. So, well, basically, just to go back a little bit, she was found in September in the frunk. I hate saying that dumb word, but we have to
Yeah.
say it. The frunk of his Tesla, an impound lot. They smelled something, and when they made the arrest, LAPD determined that she died April 23rd, 2025, after basically going to his house, and then no one ever saw her again after she went into this Hollywood Hills home. They made this determination somehow that way, although, as you said, do we actually know that for
Well, she was dismembered. Like, good
exactly.
good luck proving it is
Well,
all I'm
so
saying.
Joseph Scott Morgan came on with me last week, made some really good points about how, this is gonna be tough, but there were insects and there were liquid. Like, based on
Okay.
these insects, they
Then
might
they
be
can
able to
tell.
tell
Okay.
yeah, based on species, about how long, at least how long she was, in the car for, if anything, and then maybe, upon further testing, 'cause we don't have everything, right, in that report because there were
No, yeah.
rumors that maybe she was frozen. So I said, "Well, was she
Yeah,
ever frozen and thawed? Were her fingers waterlogged?" And Joe Scott said, you'd have to do additional tissue testing to figure that out." So I'm like, "Okay, there could be more testing coming," but based on the autopsy, she was stabbed through the ribs and then also near the liver, which caused her to bleed out internally and slowly. And I think, the
I
biggest
just
thing
don't know how they're
yeah.
gonna be able to make that distinction from when they were dismembering her, to be honest with you. If they're
only
trying to
bugs.
truly dismember her,
She
I
had
mean,
clothes on during when she I mean, that's the weirdest thing too. They had her in a yellow tube top, black pants. I I don't understand how a young man who weighs, according to his booking, 125 pounds, again, I haven't seen that since like 8th grade, okay? Like 5'3", he dismembered a body by
I see. I
himself?
I keep and so in terms of the time of death, they're using kind of the Murdoch technique, and it's by the last time
Uh,
she used her phone.
yeah,
Like it's a
yeah,
new concept that they're using where they're establishing time of death by the last time we used our anchors, our
yeah.
albatrosses. And it's pretty effective. I mean, it's a pretty effective argument if you're able to show a history that she was on her phone constantly, and it was always charging habits and all that kind of stuff. It's going to be an effective way to kind of show, well, when that stopped, that's when she died.
Okay, but
And
but Bob, but Bob, I get that, right? You can maybe get to cause of death. First problem is cause of death, right?
yeah,
Because
yep,
Yeah.
because she's dismembered. And you can maybe get to time of death. But how do you get to who the perpetrator of that was
that's the
without
problem.
without a witness,
That's
without
the
a
that's
murder weapon?
That's what I'm
that's the
saying, man. That somebody's gonna have to flip. One of the entourage is gonna have to flip. And if
that's
you
the
don't think
bit.
that they're going at these guys, they are. Because and there's no way. Is it David or David?
It's David. Can I ask you
David.
guys something? If they had a murder weapon, would we already know about it? Would they have said that in the press conference? How do we know they don't have a murder
I
weapon?
don't
Are you just
know. I mean,
guessing?
Think
my
they
view.
would say that. I don't think law enforcement would say that they have a very specific murder weapon, even if they had one, unless they've already tested it, unless they've already proven that it might have been the murder weapon. And it's not in the charging documents, is it, that they have a murder, that they have an
Well,
actual.
wouldn't that be part of the probable cause? Because we know they convened a grand jury. The grand jury either no billed or they didn't finish it, whatever. He was arrested on probable cause, like you said, no complaint yet. So I would think, and they were asked this in the press conference. They said, why after 7 months, a grand jury, there's no indictment. What was the new evidence here? And basically, Nathan Hochman said, um, digital and forensic evidence. They had to comb through it and ensure they had a case for the last 7 months to put it all together. So I would have thought, being asked that question, wouldn't they say, well, we have a murder weapon with his DNA on it? I don't know.
I mean, theoretically, essentially, if you look at it with obviously completely different circumstances, it's basically the Murdoch case. I
Mhm.
mean, like Murdoch was on the property. I've always kind of been on the mindset, which people get real upset with, and I try to explain to them. I'm like, look, if Murdoch hired 2 crackheads to kill his family, he's just as guilty as if he pulled the
Exactly.
trigger. Because I always kind of
Because
thought
yeah,
that made more sense to me
than him
because
doing it.
what just him, like,
Yeah,
he definitely loved his people, you know what
yeah.
I mean? And I don't know if he had it in him to be able to go to that extreme, but I think that he may have felt that he needed to accomplish it, so maybe he hires the people. But in this situation, to me, it's very similar to going what Rich was saying. How are they gonna be able to prove who was the actual culprit, who actually did the killing? And at the end of the day, when you've got this situation, which you touched upon, Sonny, which is something that I just can't not stop thinking about, which is the parents. I've got 4 kids. The day that my 13
Well,
slash
yeah,
14-year-old goes
yeah.
and hangs out with a TikTok rapper for months,
No. Mm.
my head will explode. It's like, it's not happening. And I don't know what that relationship is. I don't know what was going on with
And
with
she was a
mom and dad and
runaway.
daughter.
She had a history of running away, based on information available to the public. She had a history of running away. So what was going on? Uh,
It
I
seemed
just
like
think
they
that,
knew where she was at.
yeah, that they knew where she was, and they were, for some reason, okay with that. I don't understand that. And we keep getting that type of thing with parents and these celebrities, and the children that are underage, and they're kind of hanging out with them. But yeah, none of that is okay. I'm My children are all adults now, four children, grown adults. um of course they are doing what they want to do, but I'm still saying, I'm still saying, no, not when they were young. And yeah,
Yeah.
and that could be conflicting. And when you have teenagers, they can be trying. I have that one kid that was always trying his luck, and you have to you have to have some sternness, but when my son misbehaved, I called the police on him because I'm like, we're not doing this. I am not going to be the parent that is not letting law enforcement know what you're not doing. So I don't understand these parents. And I know some parents are going to say, you can't control everything that your children are doing, but when they are underage, you can absolutely put in some parameters where you're not the one where other people are also engaged and involved. It does require a village sometimes, and sometimes you have to
Yeah,
step outside
yeah.
the village and not and not engage in that. I think this case is unique. I love what you said, Lauren, about the insects because that really makes sense. There's certain
It's
type
Joe,
of
not
insect.
me, Joe.
Yeah, Joe. There's certain type of insects that come upon the body. When you're doing the training outside about investigative practices, and they talk. Well, first of all, I don't like bugs, which is why I'm never going to be buried. I'm going to be creepy because I can't do the bug thing. And this is really I do not want to be buried because I have this thing about bugs. So I want to be
You'll be
But Sonny
dead.
won't be alive.
yeah, I
All
want
right, all right,
to.
Bob. I wanna end this discussion with a technical criminal law question for you. So Lauren asked some questions about, what do we know about the evidence? And I totally understand when you're doing an investigation, and I assume David is not the only person they're investigating. I don't believe for a second that the total crime here was committed by one person,
Yeah.
What
right?
I
I
said
don't
Right.
believe
too.
that for a minute.
Not
Some
at
So
all.
there's
people do though, Rich. Some people think he's just that stupid. Just keep
That's
that in mind.
crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That didn't happen. But so there's an ongoing investigation. So law enforcement isn't going to go on TV and show you every piece of evidence they have because that hurts
Right,
their investigation.
right.
But in this case, the defense is insisting on a preliminary hearing, right? And do you expect the prosecution at preliminary hearing will have to put all their cards on the table?
Mm,
I have this discussion all the time in relation to probable cause affidavits. I'll have the debate. My mindset was in a case that's high profile, typically they're gonna list their strongest evidence in the probable cause affidavit because they want the charges to stand up, especially if they know they're going to a probable preliminary hearing. Because in a in a preliminary hearing, which I love because it's our first bite at the apple in terms of being able to
mhm.
get a cop on the stand, get some cross examination in, kind of see what they might or might not have. Um, I, I mean, yeah, I think ultimately it's going to be a situation where they're going to have to show some cards, man. Like because right now we're all sitting here speculating that it couldn't have been him alone. None of us think that for 1 second. And you need these charges to stand up. So you're going to have to start showing some probable cause beyond just an estimated time of death, and that maybe she was killed with a sharp, blunt force. I mean, it's got to be more
Something.
than that, man. I mean, and they've brought in like the lying in wait and the financial gain stuff to try to potentially make this a death penalty case. And the financial gain thing is such a stretch because
Yeah,
they're
I
essentially
think that.
saying yeah, well, what they're saying is that he killed her because or he had her killed, whatever the case may be, because she was threatening his career. Is like, that she was gonna fess up that he was sexually assaulting her. And, that was it. He was like, "Look, that can't happen. I'm not letting you blow my shit up here. So, you got to go," that type of thing. And it's a
Okay.
stretch of what that financial gain special is. Like typically it's like insurance proceeds and things
Yeah.
of that nature that's really what the gain was. So I mean, they've got a tough road to hoe with the case. This is not some kind of slam dunk case. And I know kind of like looking at it from the outside looking in, you're like, well, she vanished for 5 months. He was like everybody knew that the last place she was at dude's house. Well,
Yeah.
so I but you need to prove it. You need to prove that he was the cause of her death. I mean, what happens if she choked? Not by somebody's hand, but choked on a piece of food. He freaks out.
Right,
He's like, "I don't
right.
know what the hell to do with it. They're gonna think I killed her." And you get a
Right.
Robert Durst, "I dismembered the body because I didn't know what
Yeah.
the hell to do with it." You know, if
Well,
if
that's
I'm
Stabbed her, but
defending him, that's where I'm
somebody
going.
stabbed her though. You wouldn't have those sharp force,
Unless
right?
you're dismembering them, and that
Oh,
starts with the torso.
you're saying
Uh,
like he could have tried to just
Yes.
start dismembering her, and so the sharp force was
It's what happened with
okay.
Robert Durst down low, like, when they
Down the
couldn't get him on
ah,
the murder, but they got him on the dismembering of the bodies. It's
I
Mm.
did
like
not
initially. It's tricky. Like, I don't know how they're going to if, like, the problem for the prosecution is the fact that she was dismembered, what she dismembering in terms of and I don't know the level of dismemberment, but typically that's the head, the arms, the torso, the legs.
yeah, her
Yeah, I
You know
eyes,
think
what I
her
mean?
left eye was missing, her
yeah,
her
I think
head
they
was in another.
really did. Yeah, I think they really did chop her up.
So, like,
I
that's what
don't
I'm
think it's
saying.
safe,
How
right?
are you going to if you're the state, how are you going to differentiate between dismemberment and you're gonna now say that was the mode by which she was killed with
Okay.
what's you know what I mean? It's tough. It's tough. It really is. Like, if she hadn't been dismembered, then you're cooking with gas,
Right.
then you got something going on. And I'm not saying that they're not gonna be able to prove it. I'm just saying there's a defense to it.
There's reasonable doubt.
right. Although absent a dismemberment, you might have had other kinds of defenses, like it was
Th-
an accident, or
Right.
Yes.
you might
Yeah.
have
But I
had
still think
something
you
that
have
the
that defense.
dismemberment really, really effectively makes it look like a very horrendous, heinous crime.
I mean, but you gotta think about the age of these kids, man. Like, this is a kid who, like, hit on TikTok with a couple of songs and made a couple of $1,000,000. Like, he's not Diddy rich, right? Like, this
I
guy
know.
isn't Diddy rich. He made a couple of $1,000,000. And say she did die accidentally, and she's been at his spot for 5 months, and they don't know what to do with her. They're like, "Oh my god, they're gonna think that we killed her," if it was something like she tripped and fell down the stairs. And you're like, "Oh my," and you got a bunch of 16, 17, 18, 19-year-olds sitting there like, "Oh man, what do we do?" And then they're like, "Well, we just gotta get rid of her," and be like, we don't know. Like, I don't, as opposed to saying, okay, well, we're going to call law enforcement. She tripped down the stairs. She broke her neck. You know what I mean? I could see a world in which they may have thought that the better course was to try to get rid of the body as opposed to injecting law enforcement into their lives if it was some kind of accidental death.
Why though, David? Out of sight, out of mind. You preemptively transfer your homes to your mom. Like he knew he was going
Something
down
he
I
somehow.
mean,
discovered.
if he's got a money guy, his money guy is saying, "Look, man, like if the money guy or the attorney is being honest with him, you say, yeah, look, they're gonna come looking at you, dude. Like they
Yeah.
they know that you were the last person to be in
Yeah.
contact with her. They're coming. So
Yeah, well,
make your moves now. That
protect your
doesn't
assets.
necessarily prove it,
Yeah.
but
And
I
all the
mean,
other
it's gonna
friends
be
don't
a.
have that. Yeah. Yeah. All the other
I'm
friends
telling
and,
you,
and
this
people who
this
are
case is
complicit
gonna
don't
it's
have
gonna
that access.
hinge on somebody
Yeah.
flipping. I'm telling
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. That
Yeah.
All
that's what
right.
I'm thinking.
All right. I'm sorry, Sonny.
No, I was saying somebody is flipping because like David has this, but all of his friends, they don't have this. They don't have the money. They don't have the means. But they can be complicit because they were silent, didn't say anything. So yeah, somebody's flipping. Somebody's saying something because they're like, oh, oh, hell no. I'm going to go to jail for some shiggity I didn't do either. No,
Right.
no, no.
That's how that thing goes. That's how
Yeah.
that thing goes
All
when
right.
they get 'em
I
to flip.
love this discussion on both of these cases. But I gotta wrap it up and let you guys
Okay.
go about your real jobs, uh, and lives.
I love
So
this.
I'm going to offer you each an opportunity to make a closing argument. I will offer you the following topic, but you can also pick off script and talk about anything you want. Honey, who's more likely to get convicted, David or Harvey Weinstein? Go.
Weinstein. is more likely to get convicted because he's already been convicted. I think, David, there's some reasonable doubt there.
All right, Bob, same question or pick something different?
I think they're both going down. I think without the Molyneux witnesses coming in, I think he's ultimately gonna go down. And I don't know if they'll get him on the murder one,
Yeah.
but he's definitely getting convicted on some stuff. What it'll be, I don't think he'll get the death penalty ultimately. I don't think they'll be able to make that, but I think they're both gonna get convicted.
Ooh. Do I get the same question?
Yes, you do.
Okay. I do think there is a chance that this jury could wind up hung again. I do. I think
On
that
Weinstein.
it could sorry, yes, it could be split on Weinstein just based on some of the reactions. And again, we're not through the entire trial yet, so I may change my mind, but I think there's a chance it could be split. And then with David, although I see the reasonable doubt, I think that when it comes to a child, because she was a child and Beth Silverman is fierce as hell,
Yes.
and the LADA's office and the LAPD will look very silly if something gets mucked up with this case. I think they're going to do everything they can to ensure that David gets convicted. So I think he's going down.
Okay, I
All
agree
right.
too, but anyway.
Well, I have to say, I thought the most compelling argument was Bob. He's going down on something, right?
Yeah.
Because he's involved in this.
Yeah, yeah.
And some other time we'll talk about your Murdoch theory, Bob, because I'm sort of with you.
Yeah.
That guy knows what happened
Yeah, he did.
that night, and he ain't saying.
No.
Exactly. But my thing was, he had these 2 guys come onto his property. He had him use his guns because he didn't trust these dudes, and they were probably guys he was dealing to.
Yeah.
And, he's like, "I'm gonna get rid of the guns because I don't trust y'all running around with these guns out in these streets." So that's when he goes out, buries them somewhere on his mother's property. Yeah, that would be a good conversation because I take a lot of heat on it, but, I don't care.
Yeah. Well, if you're gonna go on the tube here and espouse opinions about these cases, you'll get some heat. Okay,
No
I have
question.
consulted our auditor's office on the scorekeeping from this episode, and our winner this week is Lauren Conlin.
Yes, I agree. I concur.
What do
I
I
concur.
win?
I concur.
I'm glad you asked that question.
Yes.
Nothing.
A hearty handshake,
Absolutely
a nice round of
nothing.
applause.
Except you're memorialized as
How
winning
about
one
a
of these
martini?
episodes.
How about a New York City martini?
Bragging
Is that
right.
Can you buy me a martini after court?
We can figure out.
Okay,
We
great.
can figure out something. We can figure out
I'll
something.
do a Kettle One with a twist, please. Next time you
Hey,
see
I
me there.
love. Okay, I'm coming because I won last time that I was on. So
I wonder if I can get DoorDash to deliver that. Anyway, thank you all so much for joining us. Always a pleasure to see all of you. I actually am on trial next week on a civil matter in Nassau County. So for those of you who are following this little endeavor, we'll be taking a 1-week break, but then we'll see you next time with another panel. Don't forget to like this video. You don't have to like me, like these other people, but you can subscribe to us. We will see you soon. For now, we are adjourned.